mirrors. It looks like you're out.
This is only meeting number 2.
Can you hear us?
I almost had to do this one by Zoom. I was traveling, but it worked out.
I was really in the closet taking a meeting. Everybody's still
Yeah.
virtual, so it leaves you no time to move around. You can't, there's no travel time.
Okay. Can anybody on the video screen hear us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're good. Thank you. Well, Gina Dunlap and I would like to welcome everybody to the meeting today. Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. And we are doing this meeting in person here at Grawemeyer Hall at the great University of Louisville, thanks to Mark Watkins and your hospitality. Rita, could you call the roll, please?
J. Michael Brown. Jennifer Hancock.
Here.
Devon Holt.
Here.
David James.
Here.
David Kaplan.
Present.
Christina Shadle. Dr. Frank Smith.
Present.
Steve Traeger.
Present.
Dr. Don Wade. Mark Watkins.
Present.
Rebecca Fleischaker.
Here.
Jeff Taylor for Larry Hayes.
Present virtually.
Thank you. And that's it. We do have a guest in the house today, Mr. Courtney, to your left.
Thank you, Rita.
We do have a quorum.
And we do have a quorum. That's good. Next we have, and does everybody have an agenda? Just want to make sure before we get started. Anybody not have an agenda? Everybody good? All right. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. And part of our unfinished business is at our last meeting, which was our first meeting, this is our second meeting. We elected co-chairs, myself and Gina Dunlap, to lead this effort, which was great, except for then we found out that we can't do that because state law says that we have to have a chair and a vice chair. So we need to take care of that first and get that out of the way. Anybody have any thoughts, ideas, nominations would be great, and so we can move forward.
Well, I'll start it off the last time. I'll start it off again. This time, I'd like to nominate David James as possible chair.
Thank you. Any other nominations for chair? All right. Hearing no other nominations, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The next thing we need to do is work on a vice chair, and I would like to nominate Gina Dunlap for vice chair. Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. All in favor of Gina Dunlap as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. All right, we can move forward. The next item on the agenda is the approval of bylaws, and there was a lot of discussion last time about the bylaws. We had a draft proposal of bylaws, and there were some comments that people thought about and talked about at the last meeting. Rita sent out. Did someone say something? I'm sorry. Rita sent out the draft bylaws. And as you think about and there were some responses, I think Rebecca sent in some responses.
I almost did, and it went back out.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Oh, okay, great. So we had some responses. And so I guess before we start the discussion, I think, we don't have a total full board yet. And so I think that as we think about the draft bylaws, that we should think of them as temporary bylaws until we actually have a full board that can formulate real bylaws, our regular bylaws, maybe that's the best way to say that. But I thought J. Michael Brown had some ideas also at the last meeting about the removal process. And so I'm just gonna open up the floor and let's just talk about it and see where we end up as we go. So does anybody want to start? J. Michael Brown, you look like you have that look on your face. I'm wrapped up in. One second. So we don't mess up. There you
My
go.
bylaw concern is that, and I agree with you, that I don't know that we can have a fully operative permanent set of bylaws until they can be passed by a fully operative permanent set of directors. Now, that being said, I also think that it's quite likely that there won't be an opportunity to take any significant actions which would have been governed by, the very technical aspects of the bylaws prior to the time that the board is established. So we're sort of, because of the way the statute was written and implemented, we kind of fall into a little bit of a limbo situation where we are right now, in my estimation, we're guiding ourselves toward being fully operational. And right now, the more technical aspects of the bylaws are not of that great concern, as long as we don't do something, completely ultra virus.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Nope.
So could we have a formal expression of these bylaws if we were to take action on them as temporary? They would be, or
Sure.
what, instead of saying bylaws, we would be formally
In the
entitled.
title, we can say these are temporary bylaws until can be formulated by the full board once the full board is in place. Is everybody okay with that? All right. Any other thoughts, comments, ideas? None? All right. Rita, I know you're taking notes over there. Could you entitle the bylaws or add to the title of the bylaws that these bylaws are temporary bylaws that the board will operate under until such time that we get a full board in place to actually produce permanent bylaws? Everybody in favor of the temporary bylaws that we've looked at, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. All right. Next, we have the approval of minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? Any discussion, deletions, additions? None?
Actually, there was one segment of the bylaws that noted that I'd made a comment, but there wasn't anything specifically there. I don't have them in front of me now, but I think my comment was similar to the one that the other gentleman mentioned there made. I mean, I don't have an exact recollection, but I either wanted, that removed since there's not any particular content in my comment listed, or just be folded in with the other speaker, because I think we were saying the same thing, which I think was that the bylaws provide for temporary leadership, chair and vice chair. I think it was on that subject matter. The current draft bylaws provide for that, so I'd like that to be clarified.
Okay, Rita, could you note that in the minutes, please? Any other corrections or additions or deletions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from our first meeting, our last meeting, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. The minutes are approved as written with the amendment. Board development. So, we need to bring on the rest of the board members, and we also need to create the board for the advisory council. And we need to have a small work group to do that. And so I'm looking for some energetic volunteers to help create the protocols or the policies or whatever we're going to use for a matrix to bring on the members from the 9 neighborhoods. And over the time since we last met, myself, Mr. Kaplan, and Dr. Smith were at a event at California Park to talk to some neighborhood folks about that. And one of the things that Dr. Smith talked about, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he was speaking about to make sure that whoever that it is that we bring in on this is not a social group, it's a business group to do business. And that we want to make sure that those board members have some business acumen. I'll let you speak to that. And I think it's something we should talk about.
You've articulated it sufficiently.
Oh, sorry. All right. So with that being said, I just think that anybody throw up their hand that would like to be on the committee or, okay, Devon? All right. Dr. Smith? Anybody else?
I'll join you.
Okay.
Is Sadiqa on here? I know she and I had a conversation. I think she wants to- I want to put her forward if she's not.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was supposed to bring that up under unfinished business. So Sadiqa, in between the last meeting, our first meeting and this meeting, there was some correspondence that took place. I think it's in everybody.
It's in the folder.
Okay, it's in the folder on the Gmail, on the G drive, on the Google Drive. That because her position with the Federal Reserve as a board member on that the Federal Reserve would not allow her to serve as a representative on this board. And so she's no longer with this board. So she's not eligible to be that.
Excuse me,
Yeah, thank you.
I have to respectfully disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, she was on,
Please.
she was on the board
Okay,
by virtue of a statutory appointment by the governor of the Commonwealth. That just can't be undone by, any particular one document. Because one, the statute mandated that the governor do that. The statute has not been changed. The governor did it, number two. Number three, I'm not completely confident that we've had sufficient documentation from the Federal Reserve Board saying that it can't be done that way. So at this point, just like with the bylaws, until the full board is, and I think that although she's not at this meeting today, I don't think that means that she's at all removed from the board. I think that's very much an open question that has to be discussed and finalized. And again, like I said before, like with due process, just one person's opinion at this point in time, I don't think is sufficient. And I know it's insufficient to remove a gubernatorial appointment.
I would agree with you. And my only, I'm not disagreeing with you, is that if I'm not mistaken, I don't have the document here in front of me, but I think she said that she wasn't going to participate anymore because of that, but I could be wrong or something to that degree.
And I can understand her taking a precautionary step as any of us would in a situation where it hadn't ultimately be decided. She wouldn't want to come and do something and then have that action, although we're not at a point of taking action, taken into question because she wasn't a valid member of the board. So the safe thing to do is to wait for that ultimate issue to be decided. It's much like some of us in the legal situation, if we thought there was a conflict, you recuse yourself until you understand that the conflict has in fact been removed.
Okay, sounds good. And
Can I make a
Mr.
comment?
Kaplan? Yeah,
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. I reviewed the bylaws a few days ago and made some comments on the, that we can be used later if they're helpful on the Google Docs, which I don't normally use, but I think I put them on there next to Rebecca's. But one thing I did notice is that we're authorized to create committees, or maybe it's the chair, I forget. This entity can have committees. I don't think it says that committee members have to be board members. I thought there was an option in there to put non-board members on committees. This, if we have them here, we could confirm that, but that would also provide an option in the event, depending on how this unfolds, to bring her on if for whatever reason she doesn't wind up being a board member after all that's plays out. So I just wanted to throw that out there as an option.
cool. Anybody else? So, I agree. So,
letters. And, you know, the Fed is wonderful in many ways, but they're a bureaucratic monster.
I agree. So is everybody comfortable then with following what J. Michael Brown just spoke about, and let's leave her in place until something changes? Is everybody okay with that?
Well, could we please clarify the process? How will that get?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Clarify the
How
process.
will that get resolved? What is the process for resolution?
Well, one, first we have to actually determine what needs to be resolved. The statute called for a representative from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve had been well aware of the fact that the statute had been drafted like that for quite some time. Then there seems to be some contrary stances coming out of either the Federal Reserve or their representatives as to who and in what capacity. For example, at one point, there was a willingness to serve, then at another point, well, a board member can't fill that position, but then at another point, they could serve as some type of advisory position. Well, I don't think you can do indirectly what you can't do directly. So it's either going to be that there's going to be, and none of this has come, and at least that I have seen, directly from the Federal Reserve notifying WEOP and or the governor in an official, what I would consider a legal opinion that this can't be done. That's the first problem. The second problem is we have a law. And, the governor can't on his own just choose to, although many would argue this for recent things, but to ignore the law. He acted in compliance with how the statute was written. So either the statute itself is going to have to be amended after some advice from the Federal Reserve, or the Federal Reserve is going to have to notify this board by some other official communication of what the exact status is. I think in the meantime, Ms. Reynolds' non-participation is, I would view it as precautionary. And then to the ultimate point, right now, just like it doesn't matter until we get to a point of having a fully constituted board and do some business. So the fact of her presence or absence here today really doesn't impact the long-term efficacy of the governor's appointment by someone from the Federal Reserve to serve. So I think we need to reach out to the Federal Reserve and get their position on it, but that still doesn't change the governor's statutory position.
Can she fall under like a member of the community part of the board, or can she fall in a different category?
You mean if she weren't on the board, you mean hypothetically?
No, can we have her be a board member as one of the members of the community?
Oh, from the 9 neighborhoods, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, no, because she doesn't live in the 9 neighborhoods. But she could still be on the board technically until further notice, right?
When these are open meetings. so she-
Right. Participate, right. I agree.
Does she not want to be on the board?
It's not,
My question is, if she doesn't want to be on the board, is there a reason? I don't understand what happened. So is she not being able to be on behalf of the Urban League nor the Federal Reserve, or is it one or the other?
well, let's pretend, so what J. Michael Brown spoke to us about would be as the Federal Reserve representative. Now, she could appoint herself as the Urban League representative, but that would remove Christina Shadle from that position.
So this is all about the Federal Reserve.
This is about the Federal Reserve. Go ahead. J. Michael Brown, were you gonna say something?
Well, she can't appoint herself to anything. I mean, the statute calls for a number of appointments to be made from a number of different organizations. And it's not as if those organizations can make all the recommendations they want to, but it still comes down to the governor by statute has to appoint that person for a certain term of years. And then after those term of years, whether or not, albeit with the statute in place, Federal Reserve itself feels like they can have a record. I'm sorry, that doesn't change the statute at all. That's their position. However, their position has been presented by a singular person who's no longer with the Federal Reserve, and I don't know that we've seen any further communication on it. So at this point, and there is no issue about letting her serve, she's on the board until it's otherwise determined that either that she can't be, or that she absolutely completely recuses herself, and we just have a void position until it can be resolved. But we're not at that point today.
Okay. Dr. Schmidt.
Could I make it's just a thought, could we, a suggestion, recommendation that board member Brown and Vice Chair Dunlap and maybe another person ferret out this one issue, and then between now and our next board meeting, come back with whatever due diligence from the governor's office, from the legislature, from Fed, on what should be our next course of action on this matter. Would that be acceptable? Maybe a 3-person team that could just deal with this issue. It's just a suggestion.
Any comments on it? Anybody opposed to that? No? Need a 3rd person. And so Dr. Smith, since that was your suggestion, would you and J. Michael Brown and Gina be willing to serve for that?
I have no problem. I just opened it at just anyone else really, if they would like to, it's fine with me. I just think this seems to be something that's going to require more time.
Right.
And more work to get the best understanding than what we could get to today, or maybe in even the next meeting.
I agree. All right. Thanks for volunteering, everybody. All right. So we have Speaker Reynolds, yeah, excuse me. What?
You say?
Excuse me, ma'am. No, ma'am. Ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Public could come to this meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We are members
No,
of
ma'am.
HDN Assembly. that's
No,
in
ma'am.
Black neighborhoods.
Yes, ma'am.
And we are here to speak with you. We
Yes,
have
ma'am.
questions The residents have been asking, and asking
Ma'am.
me to hear your response.
Ma'am.
We were told by you
Ma'am.
and two other members of this board
Ma'am,
that we may come here.
ma'am, you're not allowed to interrupt the meeting. You're not allowed to interrupt the meeting.
During this meeting. Can we get
Ma'am, you're
notice?
not allowed
So
to interrupt the
residents are
meeting.
not allowed to speak in this meeting.
No, ma'am.
Residents are not allowed to attend this meeting.
You can attend the meeting.
About this meeting for us.
Ma'am, I'm
It's
gonna,
happening not only.
ma'am,
outside of the West End.
ma'am,
That you about where it's hard to navigate if you don't.
ma'am,
Where to park if you don't.
you are allowed to attend the meeting.
And it's happening in the middle.
You
of
are
the
not allowed to
middle of
speak
the
during the
day,
meeting.
when people
Ma'am, I'm going to
cannot
ask you to
attend
leave.
it.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please have a seat.
So there is no
Ma'am.
opportunity for residents to speak.
Ma'am.
is what I'm hearing.
I'm going to ask you to please have a seat.
That ain't right.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please have a seat.
There is no opportunity for residents to speak at this meeting.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please have a seat.
There is no opportunity for West End residents to speak at this meeting.
Could I make,
No opportunity to speak at this meeting.
I would
Could I say
entertain a
something?
motion that we adjourn temporarily.
The West End Opportunities Partnership does not create opportunities for residents to ask questions. They do not create opportunities for residents to be at meetings. They do not create opportunities to actually be educated on the legislation, which states your responsibilities. It states what you can and can't do. It lets us know transparently what's happening. There is a growing number of residents in this city, both West End residents and allies.
Ma'am,
Many of us from historically Black neighborhoods who have dealt with rooms like this. Rooms full of power holders that do not let us speak. Rooms full of power holders that tell us, this is what you wanted. You wanted us to come in. Rooms full of power holders that continuously block our voices, but tell us that we can be heard. We will be back. We have questions.
so we have I'm sorry, Dr. Smith.
may make a suggestion is that we might appeal to the community to understand that we as a initializing group of board members are trying to figure out how to best facilitate our next steps so that we can best clarify what is to come. And you've already heard today that there are several particulars that we are still grappling with. So we are very sensitive, and as you have mentioned, myself, Councilman James, our chair, and help me with your name again, I'm sorry. We were out at the community meeting because we wanted to engage. And there are several formats that I believe we will continue to engage. We ask you to please be patient with us because this is a new initiative. And as I said in the park, this is something that personally I'm committed to hearing and gleaning whatever information we can get from the community. So if you could allow us to work through some of these factors so that we can better function and facilitate with clarity, I would certainly beg that of you as our guest.
To say that we are all. I don't think that. The consideration so that we can get to the root of the issues that you all are asking to be heard and to be rectified. So I think that action is the word that you mentioned. I think.
Let residents speak.
I think that in order to do that, one of the attributes of this board are for residents to be a part of that board, right? So I think that you all should give us your information, and when that time happens, then you may be a candidate for being on the board to have a voice.
We asked on September 8th if we could attend this meeting and ask questions. We were told, yes, you had plenty of time to put us on the agenda. Plenty of time. Now, obviously, a lot of residents weren't going to be at this meeting because it's inconvenient, it's expensive, and it's in the middle of the damn day.
Yeah.
As a business owner, it took me lots of time to get here. I parked in a garage that I don't even know how much it's gonna cost until I leave. Then I walked across campus. This is not convenient for an area of the city that you claim to be undereducated, have low income. So you want them to catch a $2 bus down here, not knowing exactly where they're going, then walk around, then catch a $2 bus back home, or become, upset, frustrated, and leave. This is not convenient. We told you on September 8th that there were plenty of places in West Louisville to have this meeting. And yet, 2.5 weeks later, it's still here. As a business owner, a community leader, and involved in all kinds of organizations, we can turn a meeting around in 24 hours and move it, have it set up.
Yes.
I do not understand why the people, the caliber that's on this board could not have moved the meeting. We told you in the park, and there were lots of residents there, that this was not a good place. Having it on Zoom is also not good. West Louisville has the lowest rate of Wi-Fi and the slowest Wi-Fi. So how in the heck were you expecting us to watch it? Also, I'm on lots of community lists. I did not get this Zoom meeting. Someone else sent it to me blinded to say, here it is. Well, it was like 10 o'clock last night. How am I gonna get that out to residents that may be at work or may not have access to internet or whatever late at night? They may not have it on their phone. This smells of the same way this TIF was created, without transparency, without resident input. We're not totally saying that a whole TIF may be totally out of the question later on, but I haven't seen where it's successful for residents, only for commercial businesses. And why didn't we have these type of community meetings before? So we could have put in our ideas, engagement, and by the time we got here, we would have all been on the same page, and we could have all moved forward. So I'm sorry to interrupt your meeting.
No,
but
I think
again,
that your points are very well taken, but I think this is inconvenient for all of
Would you
us.
like to speak?
So I think that
Oh, well,
we
you
have to
tell
do,
those people that-
no, we have to do our due diligence if you want to get to where you're.
What this
asking us
is
to get.
doing, doing is, I would say to our fellow board members, it's indicating some of the challenges that we definitely want to be inclusive in how we form our steps.
Getting people to the
And
meeting.
what I want to
is
also
number
add,
one.
let me also
Meeting
say,
with people will
every
start making
interrupt,
plans is important.
every interruption delays
Every interruption
us getting
stops you
the
from
community
spending more time,
members
wasting
on the
more
board.
time. You're wasting resident
So
time.
you are
You're
also
wasting
adding,
resident time.
you're adding
Listen
to,
to them speak.
you're adding to our,
Listen to them speak.
we allowed you to
Listen
speak.
the residents speak.
You didn't allow anyone to speak.
Okay.
It was just moments where someone took the floor.
Okay.
Everyone in here, there's different expressions
Yeah.
coming across people's faces. Some people might be concerned, their expressions, their body language seems to lend to that. Other people, you seem unmoved, even by the facts stated about the lack of community engagement and involvement from the beginning. People have been upset about this and expressing their discontent from the beginning that it was leaked before it was voted upon. So if you all don't have issues with it and you want to have a private meeting where people cannot speak, even though you were in the community and you said otherwise, amongst your voting constituents.
So just be clear. No. We said you could attend the meeting. We did not say you get to speak. We did not say that you would get to speak at the meeting. It was not said that you get to speak at the meeting.
Let her speak.
It was not said that you get to speak at the meeting.
Let her speak. David James will not let a West End resident speak at the West End Opportunity Partnership meeting.
But you are also not letting her speak. You are also not letting her speak.
Will not. Gina Dunlap will not
She's trying to talk over you.
let residents speak at the board meetings.
You should have had it on your agenda from.
All of you, Simmons College, you won't let residents speak. won't let Weston residents.
Young lady,
You better won't let Weston residents speak.
young lady,
The city.
young lady,
The city will not let Weston residents.
who would you like to speak?
Right there, let's start, let's go. Let's do it.
What, is she gonna speak?
You're having.
You know, here's my position. One,
No, you asked who should speak, and so if you are not letting people speak, this does not stop.
Yeah.
Do they get to speak?
Are we able to?
you know, are you gonna let me say something? Look,
Is that the answer?
the
You
answer,
will not let them speak. What is your name, sir?
my name is J. Michael Brown.
Who do you represent? Oh, J. Michael Brown, who do you represent?
For this purpose, I am the at-large member to the We Are Board.
The at-large member, what organization got you
You
here?
need to back off a little bit, young lady.
Back off.
Yes.
I want you to back off of the West End. Back off of the West End.
Now,
Back off of the West End. Back off of the West End. Back off of the West End. You please back off of the West End. Let residents speak. Let residents speak.
You were present too, I know that you're.
I am, but I'm trying to let you speak.
But you were present that evening as well. There were 4 people present from this room, and the message was sent, and it was clear, and people may not want to step to it now, but there were 4 people, 1, 2, 3, and 4, who were there, and you conveyed a message that this meeting was open to the public, and that it was a different vibe about the agenda topics of that meeting. And Mr. Holt, I have to say, I don't expect different from you. You had a meeting at the Nia Center about 15 years ago. It was a bait and switch to sign up people for Everyone Reads. And all those people there were interested in helping kids be advanced, and nothing came of that, of all those people there. So don't sit there so smugly in this meeting. For me to see you on this board and for you to sit there and respond and react to everyone who's spoken so far, whoo, I'm surprised, and I'm actually not even surprised, I'm disappointed to see you here. I hope that you have turned over a new leaf from what you did at the Nia Center that day. That was a packed room and nothing became of it. And so now we have all these shootings and different things going on. People are baffled as to why our youth are behaving the way they are. Sir, you were in a position to make a change then. You did not. You don't need to be on this at all. At all. So that's my message to you. You can dial it back. We can walk through it. There were numerous suggestions that would have been impactful to Louisville's population, to their youth, and to the community at large. For West Louisville, people filling the room, concerned about the youth. You were the lead on that meeting. And you did not produce anything of merit. So why should you be here? Do you live in the West? Or do you stand to invest? Because that's something you all voted on. You took time to vote on that, but you could not leave room for residents to have a place to speak at all. Because right now, you're not letting us speak because you want us to, because you thought about it. It's because we're taking it.
Yes.
And that's unacceptable. Because the way this whole thing started, Brandon Reed is not from Louisville. He's not from West Louisville. Do you know who Brandon Reed is? Does anyone know who Brandon Reed is? Please raise your hand if you know who Brandon Reed is. David James, I respect you to raise it because you should. You were at the meeting of that. Does anyone know? Does anyone know who Brandon Reed is? Let me say this. Does anyone know who Representative Brandon Reed is? He designed House Bill 321. He designed this, the main thing. And nobody here is willing to say that they know who he is, so I'm gonna go with you don't know who he is. He's not from Louisville. He's not even close. Now, I'll let you do the research, but I'm curious to know how this Republican from Central Kentucky is so concerned to draft a masterful piece of legislation for West Louisville, not all of Louisville, but for West Louisville. That is suspicious, and those are the types of things that those of us who ask questions and read want to present. So when a board is compiled, whoever it was that constructed it, you have to know the roots of this, and you cannot be surprised when some of us catch wind of some more BS and we bring it to your attention, because you are being used to be a part of the problem for us as residents. I pay my taxes all the time, whether I want to or not, for trash collection, different things. People out in the county, they're like, well, where are our lights? Where's our trash?
Colleagues, we'll be taking a 10-minute recess. We will re-adjourn at 12:50. Thank you.
Extend those courtesies to the larger metro areas. So as long as I pay extra taxes in the urban services area, and you all, and Senator Neal included, cannot speak to what that total amount is that's collected in our urban taxes, and you want to collect additional taxes. But this right now, and we're speaking, some of you all taking back, I appreciate some of you that have your body language facing this way and you're actually seeming to care. But we shouldn't have to be this upset. To be heard. This is unacceptable for every last one of you. I don't know each and every one of you, and Mr. Holt, I'm sorry I had to read you that way, but you know what? It is what it is. We all have to live on our legacy. You can either change it or you can continue it. And you, sir, I expect you to change it. Everyone else, I'm gonna look into you more and more. I don't know you fully, but we shouldn't have to do all this research as residents. We shouldn't have to come up and get a dissertation in order to fight for our own area, our own home, our parents' homes. We shouldn't have to invest in an extensive counter strategy when we have the well-connected. See you later, sir. That right there, you sit in his own area and would say something to the people and say a different thing in a meeting. That is the issue that many of us have in West Louisville, and we've had that for so long. So I am mistrustful of this process. I'm mistrustful of the people who created it and the fact that they want to present it as though we, and then make us eat it, whether we do or don't.
Could I say something?
Say what you want.
I appreciate that you took the time to come, and I'm listening. I'm using I because I'm speaking for me. I feel strongly that persons who are seated here are genuinely concerned and interested in making whatever decisions we can make to bring good out of what could be a different situation. So there are many things we need to hear. And I grew up in West Louisville on Hazel Street between Woodland and Southern. So I'm familiar with West Louisville all of my life. And I have a concern. I don't think I have the answers. That's why it takes many minds to come together. And so all I'm saying is
I appreciate
what you
have this nobleness to your voice that is very soothing, as a lot of people of, religious background do have, and I think that's awesome that you have that ability. I just want you to understand, I'm hot right now because I had to walk about half a mile to get to this meeting, and I have a car. Okay, so to get to that point and then get in here, and I hear you say that you are concerned, and many of you maybe are concerned, and you are interested in moving forward differently. But if Mr. James is the lead of this committee, is that true or is that not true?
He is
He is
a temporary chair.
Then that to me shows that he's willing to abandon the people in the moment of
No,
uncomfortable.
he may have other needs that he has to attend to. So I wouldn't want to make any.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I just want you to understand. I guess the backstory is we don't really need your backstory as much as you all need our backstory. The people have numerous questions to present, and they're often shut down in the meetings that Senator Neal hosts on 2 nights a week or 2 days a week. Those questions are not answered. And to come here over the presiding body and to have the temporary or monetary, whatever, the chairperson to walk out, to first try to adjourn the meeting, then can try to get you all to not engage, and then to walk out. It speaks more than just his personal character. It says a lot about this whole project. And so I appreciate you sharing your connection. And I think that some people in a community setting like the meeting at California Park, people would appreciate that more than right now. Because at this point, we're prepared to miss a lot of real questions, and hopefully you all have real answers for those. Because so far we've been getting smoke blown in our direction.
Well, in all due respect, this is our very second time of even being able to come together. And there are procedures that we have to answer to. This is actually a law on the books. So it's not something that can be changed. How it came about, I mean, it could be amended, what have you, but right now, we're just trying to enact what is on the books.
It may be unlawful. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, well, we can drill down into.
There are laws that are wrong. And we've
Sure,
seen that historically.
sure.
So, I mean, I hear you, but just because something has been voted upon does not mean it's the best thing for people that it will affect, nor for people who put it forth. So, And then frankly, I would love to hear from somebody else. I appreciate you, but some people have not spoken at all, and it doesn't seem like you have the full membership of the board that we were told. I don't know if somebody's missing or if they're virtual, but.
I'd just like to react to
Yes,
something. So I was one of the three folks at the California neighborhood meeting, and just want to give you my vantage point on that situation. So I got an email inviting me to that, and I think it's Deanna. Danita, is it? Okay, well, the email address is not Danita, but anyway, I thought, so, but I've been communicating a little bit with Danita about, so she invited me. I thought, well, I'm on the WEOP board, I should just show up. So I didn't know what the agenda was, who would be there. It was, and I had received no communication from this board about that West End Neighborhood Coalition meeting. I think 5 of the neighborhoods were represented. They had 3 speakers. Mike Nagel, I think, is one of the ones. He's on the phone right now, unless he's dropped off, but.
Danita's here too. Danita's here too. I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Danita. So anyway, so I just showed up for that, and there were maybe 30 people there, and excluding the organizers, it seemed like maybe 20 and the participants. But there wasn't, and so there's a very organized agenda. It was a well put together meeting, and the 3 of us that were up there mostly just responded to questions. I mean, it was definitely not us telling anybody what should be done. But part of the difficulty is the 3 of us that were up there, I don't think we were in a position to answer every question, because again, we're new to this. I mean, and anyone who was there who heard what I said knows that I'm still learning, but it seems to me like more community forums that have credibility, that the people want to attend from the neighborhoods and feel like they're having real input. That's a goal that I'm hearing needs to occur, that there needs to be more back and forth conversations and listening, perspective taking, not just perspective giving type of conversations. There also have to be business meetings like this, you know, public meetings where just certain things have to be done. But it does strike me that maybe things have been moving too slowly, and because the board hasn't had any conversations really yet about how to do the communications and to receive the information from the interested people. That's just something we haven't addressed yet. So if anything good comes from today, one of the things would be we would start having that conversation if there's a deficit of the communication that needs to be happening. It sounds like there is, and us learning. But I just wanted to communicate from my individual perspective. You know, there's certainly no intent to do anything in secret or not get perspectives from the most interested participants. It's not that at all. And so I hope that we can start having more events where people can be heard and at the same time get whatever business has to be done. So anyway, I just wanted you to know how I felt about that. You know, and I hope that, you know, we can do better the next time on that. And one other thing I want to say, we did talk about, there was a question about getting to meetings. And I think I said that when we bring on the 9 new board members, we're going to have an entirely new conversation about where meetings are held, making sure everybody can get to them, whether they have transportation or not, somehow to make that possible. That is going to be a challenge, I think, to get 21 people where it's convenient for everybody in a convenient time. But that's a real issue, and that resonated with me. I think it's hard to come to Grawemeyer Hall unless you have a reserved parking space. I've tried to get here before and had to find parking on the street or whatever, and I'm fortunate to have a car, but it's not the easiest place to get to. I get that. So those are things that are going to have to really be deeply thought about.
The room seems a little calmer. First thing I'd like to say is that this is an open meeting, and my understanding of open meetings, and I've been at a lot, is that it's open meaning that the public can attend. So I don't know that there's anything to say that your presence is not welcome here. The second thing is, I don't know I think the agenda was for organizational purposes, but I would have no objection to someone speaking and asking questions. I think it would lead to a certain amount of frustration because if you heard from the very beginning here, we are in such an embryonic state that we're struggling to answer some very fundamental questions about our own organization and how to go forward. That's what you've just heard. I think we have here a statute. It was passed by a vast majority of the General Assembly, and I have to believe that it's well-intentioned. And I was at the meeting down in where it was announced down at the African American Heritage Center. And, you know, the hope is to get economic development into the west end of Louisville. Part of it that I think was well-designed that hasn't come to fruition yet is getting a representative from each of the 9 neighborhood people on the board. And as you've heard me say today, and I will continue to say, I am very much against any permanent activity by the board until the whole board is in place.
That's right.
Otherwise, a majority of the people, most of whom here you appear to distrust, they would be able to completely guide the direction of the board without those 9 others being here who too, and have a much more vested interest, day-to-day interest in those neighborhoods. Having those 9 and then the advisory council behind that is what is then going to begin to drive forward this and it is a very complicated process. One of I think the law has great intentions. I think, and I've said this to a couple of our elected officials, I think the law, because it is like most legislation in Frankfurt sometimes, people throw a whole lot of stuff in the pot and everybody wants a little piece of it. And when it comes out and you attempt to read it and follow it letter for letter, it gets very awkward. And this is one of those bills, i.e., you know, we have to get training before we can serve. We have to get applications from people before we can have a full board. We have to have a full board before we could go forward to get a staff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's an unfortunately convoluted process. I'm not against you asking questions. I'm afraid that many of the questions that you would ask at this point, I don't know that any of us could really give you anything close to a sufficient answer, not because of malintent, but because it simply hasn't been developed yet. But I would say this, let's wait until we get the entire group together. I recognize the meeting place issue. And I think that's very relevant. And I will make a suggestion that we have it in a different place, not just because of the transportation issues, but because I agree with you. I think there is, and I don't know if you're actually an expert in body language, but I'll take you at your word. But optics mean something, okay? And so this optic, although I'm a proud U of L alum, I don't know is the correct optic. I get your point on that. So I think we can have a better venue, as we like to call it, to meet. And with those other 9 and the advisory committee in place, be able to hear and have people who are probably going to be in a better position to respond, not just to, is this what this particular law is designed to do, but to some of the other issues that come up. And there can be some very relevant issues that come up that might not fall within this purview, but it can spur a completely different discussion and get that discussion out in the public arena, because as I've said, it is an open meeting. Now, that being said, you know, there's a way to communicate too. And I think you get to a point of getting somebody's attention, but you can scream at me and I might hear you, but I might not listen. You can talk to me and I might carefully evaluate every word you say and then go out and do what I'm supposed to do. In my day job, I'm an employee of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I am a representative of the governor. And I go back and I see him virtually every day. And everything I try to do is to move forward an agenda that's going to move Kentucky forward in one form or another, for all of it. In this case, it's for Jefferson County and the west end of Jefferson County. But as I say, in order to try to formulate something that's going to do that, one, it's going to help when we can articulate exactly what and your questions, even if we can't answer them, I'll know where you're headed. But number two, I can't solve something that's just vague. I get this all the time. People want to come in my office. And then I say to them, usually at the end of many of my meetings, tell me what I can do today, right now, to help solve your problem. You can't just generically solve all of the problems of the world or the West End or any place with one fell swoop, you know. So what could I do right now to make this a better situation? And I've already heard a couple of things, I think, from you that we can do, if not right now, certainly next, to help move this process forward. One is we need to expedite getting this board complete. We need to expedite getting the advisory board complete. That part I can actually help on. And then we can change our venue to a place where it's convenient, both time and location, for more people to attend. Now, on the other side, I think one of the things that you can do to help us help you is if you have a number of questions and you can get them communicated, I don't care whether it's electronically or in writing or in some way that we can get those of us involved to start looking at those answers, or at least going back to the people to ask the questions to, then we can answer it. Otherwise, you would feel very unsatisfied if you said, what about this, what about this, what about this? And I kept saying, you know, I don't know yet, I don't know yet, I don't know yet. It might be an honest answer, but it's not going to help you. So I think what we do going forward is, one, we work to get the board filled out. Two, we get a more convenient time, place, location for people. And three, maybe we have some intercommunication in the meantime to find out what some of these underlying questions are. And when we can do that, we can start to drive this thing closer together. The object of it, the big object of it, is to get some economic development in the West End of Louisville. Get money invested back in places where money has not been invested.
Can I just add, the general sentiment and the upset?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hardly hear you.
The general sentiment and upset is that July 1st, this became official. And so we're moving on, and we don't understand how many more meetings will be had without a neighborhood representative. And so if those representatives are here, that would make it a lot easier for the information to be disseminated to the rest of the community.
Okay.
That is the concern. So a lot of the people that you see here have been highly engaged in the process from the midnight hour when this bill was passed. And you all know that this was passed very quickly. And so what you say is true, which is why we brought the concern in the first place, that maybe this is something that needs to wait until the next session. But we're also suspicious of a supermajority of Republicans that help pass this legislation that often doesn't want to do things good for the West End community that doesn't involve them properly. And so as soon as possible, the priority is to get those neighborhood members here. You're already making decisions without them, whether it's one meeting, it's two, or it's three. And so the people that you see here have been in other venues where questions were supposed to be answered, but we keep meeting this wall of no one has the answers. And that's what happens when legislation is pushed through without community engagement and asking these questions beforehand. So, you know, I'm one person, but my perspective is this process, the longer that it goes on without those 9 members, is very flawed, and the community is going to distrust it.
Well,
I will be quiet.
But in part, you've heard me agree with that, in the sense that I'm saying that by no means should this partial board take any permanent action absent those other people being here. I've said it.
Not one more meeting.
Pardon me?
And we're saying not one more meeting, because it's my understanding that this body has met times since the fiscal year began. And if we haven't, there's a lot going on with this function that even you, and that may not be you to blame, it's the legislators who passed this in the midnight hour without accounting for a lot of the issues that you all are coming up and banging your head against the wall on now. And so the people that you see here are West End residents. I'm an ally. But what they are saying is, let us be at the table, even when you think these meetings, these small decisions are not big, they are. Because they need to be able to be historians to be able to pass this on to the people in the community who already don't trust this process. Everything you're saying is right. We're talking about time frames. and letting people know so that we can advocate before it's too late. Because if we are aware of this legislation before the midnight hour, and it was literally passed at 11 something at night on the last day, that we would have brought some of these concerns before. We're asking this board not to continue down that same path, making mistakes and figuring things out after the fact.
Well, there's not enough time really left in my lifetime to explain to you the legislative processes I've viewed it that goes on. It is sometimes beyond comprehension, and they do seem to have a proclivity for going up to the very last minute to do things, whether it's on, pensions or boards or COVID or anything else. But at the end of the day, the way we're set up, it is the General Assembly that has a responsibility for passing the laws. And then once the law goes into effect, then we have to go out and try to comply with it. The difficulty here in trying to comply with this particular law is because the way it was structured, it called for this group of people who could be assembled in relatively expeditious fashion, because we either turn to an organization like Simmons College or Urban League or University of Louisville or the governor or the mayor to appoint some people to it. But then it said that the remainder of the neighborhood representatives you had to have an application process. They had to come from each of the 9 things, and that invited a time-consuming process, which has not been completed. So it was to start out with a sort of chicken and an egg type situation. And, you could disagree with it, but at that point in time, it's there. And now all we're attempting to do is to make it work in the best way possible. Now, we haven't done it in the best way possible because of a couple of things that you've already mentioned. And believe me, I think in that regard, you more than accomplished what your goal or part of your goal was coming here today. But in answering some of the other specific questions, I would imagine that any of the 9 people who come on next are going to have some of the very same questions. Because, I've read the bill back and forth, and I still have a bunch of questions about it, but I also know that there's a mandate that we go forward toward the bigger goal. And then the other part of it is that all of us here are charged with the responsibility of seeing to it that it in no way turns out to be anything like you might suspect it is, like a fix is in, or this is only going to be for a certain, group of people, or it's all about some people making money and the area it's supposed to serve not being served. And I know from a fact that at least part of my role here is to see to it that that doesn't happen by using whatever experiences I have, both in government and out of government, in law and out of law, to ask those same kinds of questions to see to it that we are on the right legal track. You've heard me do that already today. I will continue to do that. What I'm saying is I'm want to communicate, and it is an open meeting, but I can only respond to questions that are presented, in a way that we can both understand. That's just me. I got one temporary vote, I guess, on this group.
We know we can't do anything until we get these other 9 members representative of the community. And we could have done nothing over the last 2 months. But I think all of us are eager to start to do something. And we're eager to get better at communicating. We're not going to be perfect, but we're learning. And you're helping us learn. We want to get better at it. We could try to get perfect, but you hate for okay to get in the way of perfect. We can't do anything till we get proper representation from the community. There's a lot of members of the community. We've got to figure out, I guess, with everyone's help, who those 9 representatives are going to be in a fair process where everyone has access. We're trying.
And let me say this. I think it's important to note too. I think part of the frustration that we've experienced in this room today, collectively, and I don't mean just you guys, I think, there are apparently what feels like two public-facing representatives for this entity. This board itself, who you are experiencing today, but then Senator Neal and Representative Stevenson host these virtual meetings where they are engaging the community in some way, what feels like maybe on behalf of this board. And I believe in those conversations, there's a lot of unanswered questions that don't make it back to this table. In many instances, I'm getting feedback from people who are saying that they can't get answers in those settings for things that apparently are ultimately going to be this board's responsibility. And so there's a disconnect in those two worlds that I think is leading to frustration that some of you all have had. But I think it's important for me to say this because I felt like my character was attacked a little bit in this setting today. My name is Devon Holt. I live in West Louisville, and I live there by choice. As a matter of fact, I had to fight to live in West Louisville because I couldn't get a bank to give me a loan to buy a house in West Louisville. I had to go to this man and get him to give me a loan when no one else would make an accommodation for me to live in West Louisville. And I did that because it was important to me to be a part of the solution. I felt like out of sight, out of mind. So I planted my flag in West Louisville. Most important investment that I've ever made is in West Louisville. And I'm there because I want to be part of the solution. And part of what I've come to understand in all the years that I've done this work, and yes, even at JCPS, is that with the best of intentions, in many cases, you can run up against brick walls that don't allow things to proceed in the way that you want them to. So when I was asked to be on this board, the reason I said yes was because I wanted to make sure that we didn't continue to run into brick walls, that there was someone here who had West Louisville's best interest before we even got around to inviting the other 9 around this table from West Louisville, that there was someone here who was going to fight for West Louisville because they woke up, lived in, existed in West Louisville every single day. That is me. And so my presence on this board, my participation on this board is not for any selfish reason other than wanting to see the community where I live, where my son lives, benefit from the opportunity to draw down off of tax incentives and TIF districts in the way that I've seen so many other communities around this city and around this state do. And so I get your frustration. I do. You want to see something done. You don't feel like your voices have been heard. And in some cases, there clearly is a disconnect between what's happening around this table. Okay, and it could be improved. I'm not suggesting that it's perfect. I'm open to all of that. But what I am going to say here in this setting today is that if this is going to be better and if this is going to work, it's got to work in a way that works for the community and in a way that works in a way that allows this board to work on behalf of the community. That means there's got to be some relationship. There's got to be some connections. There's got to be some communications that happen in a way that doesn't allow this to be the natural way that we interact with one another, because this is not productive. This is not working to advance the issues that we've identified that are slowing West Louisville down. This is not the way to get that done. So the voices are heard, and I think you've captured everyone's attention. I think at this point, we are all willing to make the shift to West Louisville for our next meetings. I think we are all willing to expedite getting 9 more members around this table from West Louisville. I think we are all open for more dialogue to make sure that we understand that there is a back and forth in communication. But I also ask, in the same way that J. Michael Brown did, that you guys give us a little leniency in helping or in allowing us to understand this process too. Because in the same way that you are frustrated because you don't have answers, We don't have a lot of those answers. We are figuring this out. We are learning this and trying to figure out the best course of action to build an effective board to do good on behalf of West Louisville. So as we figure this out, we can work hand in hand, but it does West Louisville no good for us to be in conflict with one another. Does no good. West Louisville loses if that's how we operate.
Mr. James?
Yes, sir.
My sense is that what we've gathered here today is that we've created a committee. And I would take it that we have three or four identified people, but anyone else could participate as their availability is. In moving forward with what has to be the most important thing to do, which is identifying and filling out the board. And I think that we've also heard that while they are involved in that process, that we need to look for a date, time, and place of an appropriate venue for the next meeting. I think that the remainder of the things that were on our intended agenda, I don't know that it's really sufficient to go into that until we get ready. And I would further suggest that when we do have those last board meetings, that those board positions filled out, that the first thing we do is take, and this may take an extraordinary amount of time, it may have to be longer than what we've normally scheduled meeting, and let's walk through a complete educational process of the development of the statute, what the statute is intended to do before we even, get down to the voting for the bylaws and the permanency of people.
Agreed. All right, so we're back from adjournment and on the record now. So I agree with everything that I've heard transpire, and I hope that you also heard that also. Where we were, I believe, when we left off was making sure we were naming the members of the committee to select the 9 members of the neighborhoods and the advisory council selection. And that was Sadiqa Reynolds, Devon Holt, Jennifer Hancock. Was there anybody else I left out? Oh, Dr. Frank Smith. So you all represent the committee. I need you all to select amongst yourselves and get back to myself and Gina who you all select to be your chair, your committee chair. Okay. And to work on the process for bringing those 9 members on and for creating the community advisory board. And hopefully, I'm praying that you all will have that together for our next meeting so that we can get that in place.
Is it too early to say why wouldn't they just decide who the chair is going to be today?
No, it's not. Does anybody have a desire? All right, Devon Holt is the chair. Thank you, sir. All right. And I'll let you, I'm sorry.
I just want to say one thing. I think it's a great committee. Obviously, the full board's going to have to decide, who the appointees are. So I'd love it if the committee considered whether there would be an opportunity for any board members to submit names for consideration, just in case they're not on your list for whatever reason. And then also something you may want to just think about is, I guess you're inventing the process. So, I trust you to do that. But I would be wondering to myself, am I bringing a slate of the exact number of people to the full board, or am I bringing a larger group that then the board ultimately decides? I trust committees. I believe in committees. I think you got to delegate. So I'll ultimately defer always to what I think is a strong committee process. But just I would be thinking about how this gets narrowed down in a way that gets some input from the board somehow ultimately before final approval.
I'd like to sort of flesh that out a little bit more and maybe ask for some guidance from Mr. Brown. Is this body expected to make recommendations to the governor? Because these are his, in fact, appointments, correct? No?
No, they are not.
Okay.
When you look at the statute, these next 9 are not the appointments of the governor.
Okay.
They are the appointments. This is what has made this somewhat of a convoluted process, because the board members, as I read the statute, now I can be, somebody. those who came from, the appointments from the mayor, from the respective named organizations, or from the governor, would then receive applications, and that this group would then appoint the community members, the board members from the 9 neighborhoods. I do think that the governor is involved in appointing the advisory council, which is not exactly part of the governing board that's included in the statute. And I can go on record as saying that he will make that an immediate priority. Now that we've got, yesterday's economic development thing done. So he'll turn his attention, to that in short order, certainly hopefully by the time we have our next board meeting. But those are not his appointments, because again, you see, then that would, and I think the idea of the statute was to not vest control of the board in any, my term, faction, either be it gubernatorial appointees and or mayoral appointees or any particular organization. That's my understanding of the statute.
So just to restate, and I appreciate the clarification. So for the outstanding board members and community, that is up to this body.
Yep.
But the advisory council, are we to make recommendations to the governor, or is that solely the governor's purview?
Well, I think since it's advisory, the governor will take recommendations from any place he can get them.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. We have 2 things of business we really have to get knocked out. We have not paid any of our bills for 2 months. And so, Rita, if you could talk to us a little bit about what we need to pay.
In your records, in the Google Drive, you have a number of documents. Within the financial piece, I've given you some preliminary information so that you know about the fiscal agent, how everything got set up. There's also a budget, what they called an initial budget from the, the transition team. Hard to talk with this on. It's an initial budget where I have been tracking for the last 3 months, all expenditures. And you will see there's also a report from the accounting, general ledger from the accounting firm, what has been paid. And on the budget, anything in the red shows that we still have those outstanding bills. So it's primarily from August and September. I went ahead and tracked that. So I didn't expect today for that to be resolved, but I wanted to make sure that you knew the importance of taking a look at that so that we hopefully can get approval to get those paid by next week in October. So there's a lot of information. Take a look at it. If you all have any questions, I've been the keeper of information. And I just want to go on record to say, on those interest forms, I didn't say anything a few minutes ago, I have in my possession approximately 400 from the community. And I was waiting until you all decided, set up the committee, and I'll get with you, Devon, and they're simply interest forms with all the information of everyone who has indicated they're interested in either serving on the board or the advisory council or both. I've collected them all. They all will be presented to the committee. And we can talk about the most efficient way to do that. And then secondly, we are looking for locations, just so you know, for our meetings. We've had that discussion already. So all these things have been on the table from an organizational standpoint, and they're being worked on. They're not being ignored or overlooked. So we can have those conversations as well so that you know where everything is. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Rita. So, yes,
I'm a little confused. So Rita, what is needed for you to get bills paid?
Well, I didn't know if there was gonna be an establishment of, finance committee, what's going on? Because I need to present, everybody has the financial information, but I think there needs to be some direction about if there's a finance committee, who do I get it to? And then how we move from there. It's not like it has to be done yesterday, but tomorrow would be great. No, I'm teasing. But I want to make sure that I have some direction on who to connect with to supply the information for approvals, some kind of process. Steve, I keep looking at you.
I saw the expenses.
Yeah.
Attachment.
Yeah,
Have all those been paid?
the May, June, and July, August and September have not. And we've communicated to people, so there's no issue. They understand we're in that organizational stage. But August and September expenses need to be paid. And then there's the information there in terms of the balance in the bank account. And, you know, I guess the letter of the memorandum from the Russell Development Corporation as the fiscal sponsor. You all need anything else? I have tons of information to share with you, but I just didn't want to dump because it's a lot to absorb.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
interrupt. I'm just curious where the money's coming from. Do we need to discuss who's paying?
Sure.
Are we
So,
covering something?
we received $30,000 to help get the effort started from One West, and which we'll eventually need to pay back to them at some point. And we received $100,000 from a donor and $3,000 from Senator Stivers. So we have $103,000 from that. Yeah, okay, gotcha. All right, so I'm looking around again because it's volunteer time. We need to create a finance committee, and I'm looking for any volunteers. My eye keeps drifting towards the. All right, so thank you. So we have Steve Traeger and Mark Watkins. Is there anybody else?
I guess I can do it.
Okay, J. Michael Brown. All right, so we have 3 members for the Finance Committee. Thank you very much for volunteering. And could you all decide amongst yourselves quickly today? Mark is the. Who will be the leader of the group?
Do I want to be the leader?
I'll be the leader by default.
Governor's office.
All right,
Yeah.
so moved. Steve Traeger, thank you so much for volunteering to anxiously lead this group on the Finance Committee. And Rita, if you could.
One thing to add on the finance side, I did get a text earlier for an update to share at the meeting about the fundraising piece. So I think we all know that James Graham Brown announced the 2.5 million. And David, you mentioned the receipt for the 100,000.
Yes.
Forthcoming announcements from the Churchill Downs luncheon. Total approximate leads and commitments to date is 5 million.
That's outstanding.
And we'll have more of the 10 that they're raising privately. And then we'll have more specifics going forward on that as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's good news. All right, Dr. Smith.
In keeping with what we have been saying, is this finance committee technically a temporary arrangement until we can formalize the finance committee with the entire?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the committees that we have, the Finance Committee and the Membership Committee are both temporary until we get everybody else on board. All right, so we have 2 minutes left. Does anybody have anything that they would like to? Yes, ma'am.
One thing that I think that was mentioned about the transparency about the meetings. And I do understand about the late notice of the meetings. Is there anything that can be done that can communicate that earlier so that more people can make arrangements? Because I think that that's also a concern that was brought up today, and I'm not sure if the 3 or 4 points that were introduced by Mr. Brown addressed that.
I think that's an excellent idea. So how would I'm throwing this out. How would everybody feel about when Rita sends out the meeting inquiries that we plan for the next 4 meetings, or until the end of the year, how would I say that? Until the end of the year for our meetings, so that we all know and have it on our schedule and can get it out to the public and to ourselves for scheduling. Is that okay with everybody?
And is there also a way of when that's sent out, that there's a place for people to upload questions or comments so that prior to us coming to the meeting, we have an opportunity to, so I understand the frustration that some things may have been voiced in the park. Unfortunately, that was my first time hearing of that. So I think that so that we aren't taken aback by comments that are made, that we're more aware, and that gives us an opportunity to look at the questions and think through it prior to, to the meeting.
Yeah. Rita, can you help with that?
Dr. Ray, thank you so much. In addition to a ton of other things, all of the information that we've been gathering and feedback, collating that to, it's on. Can you hear me? That will be coming to the board as well. The meeting notices, as soon as we know, we had a little challenge this time getting this meeting set. As soon as we know, we start communicating to the community about when it is. Now, the official rollout, because we have to abide by the open meetings records. So the meeting invite goes out to anybody that's in the database that we have. So if there's anybody who say they're not getting notices, all you have to do is email me or info@westendpartners.org and you're in. The media gets it, anyone who's interested gets that notification when we know about it. But I did do a little survey. So we can talk about meetings today. I would really like to know what the balance of the year is going to look like. And I had 6 people to respond in terms of the days of the week. Thursday seems to be the day that people like. The time, morning or afternoon, was the majority. Now, I don't know, given the amount of work that's going to be on the table, monthly may not do it for now. So that's going to have to be a decision in terms of what the frequency is going to be. And, most of the work, of course, is going to be done on the committee level. So the full board might be monthly, but the committee work would be something different. As far as the week of the month, the second week, actually the first, second, or third were very close. So there's a lot of flexibility there. I just need to know, and then we can plan it, and then I can send out the meeting notification for the balance of the year. So there should be no issue about people being notified.
Okay. Thank you, Rita. Did that satisfy? All right. Also, on the agenda, we talk about public meeting notices and postings of the recordings. So this meeting was recorded, and so Rita will make sure that it's posted. Rita's going to make sure it's posted on our website, the recording for this, correct?
Well, that was the other thing on the agenda. If that's how you want me to do, I can upload it. I haven't uploaded anything yet until you all decide. If you want me to put the first one and the second one, I can upload it on the website. Our meetings are posted on the website as soon as they're set. Matter of fact, David, I think you sent me an email, you saw it.
Right. Yeah. Is everybody, how about this? I'm going to make a motion. I make a motion that we post our recordings on the website. Is everybody all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. All right.
Chairman, that need to be seconded officially. If so, I second it. This is Jeff Taylor.
Okay, Jeff
Before we
Taylor
vote.
seconded. All right. Any questions? Motion.
We have a next meeting at this moment.
We don't have a next meeting date yet. So I'm hoping that
that now, right now, at least the next one, and then.
All right,
Okay, one more hour, but yes, let's try.
let's do it. If we could do it in 4 minutes.
Let's do it.
Somebody throw out a date.
The second week, the next month, maybe.
The second week of October? Is that
Let's see.
the 14th?
Could I raise a question though of the time of day? Because.
Yes, sir.
It was brought that daytime or lunchtime could be inconvenient for the community. So what time of day should we consider that may impact?
Is it possible to maybe, if we're meeting more frequently, make one during the day and then maybe make one later? Because even if we meet in the evening time, that's gonna be inconvenient for those who can't attend during the day. So maybe just alternate.
Alternate between
The time.
mornings and evenings?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be fair to give everybody the opportunity to come if they like at some point.
I would also, I guess, just reserve room for weekend times where it might even be more advantageous for community members to watch or attend.
Well, let's just get a date.
All right.
Next one.
So the 14th is on the table.
The 14th only works in the day for me. It's Metro Council night.
14th only works at noon.
Let's do it.
The reason I was raising it, I think it's important that we take action, hearing what we have heard from the community and not delay this process. So I would rather us look at these factors as of what we're deciding now for our next meeting.
So 14th doesn't work.
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
So what time is the best time for the community?
Any feedback from?
Not when people are working.
Look, I'll show.
Right.
And we can-
Would noon qualify, you think, for the next meeting?
If you said that was on a weekend, you were considering or a Thursday.
Weekend or a Thursday, right?
The weekend would be fine, but I think a Thursday is best. We're talking about a primarily working class community, so we have to be realistic about that. Not being difficult, but realistic about the community that we're working with.
So maybe since this was at noon, the next one can be an evening one, so that we
And alternate if
have some alternation. I'm fine with making that work.
14th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Anytime after 4 o'clock is not gonna work for me.
I can't. That shouldn't be.
So what if we moved it to the following Thursday, the 21st? Is Thursday the day? Is that?
I think by it being an evening one, it's easier for me to say yes to that, I think that just keeping that in mind. I think that also not trying to let too much time go by, I would be willing to come in on a weekend day to do it, so that we don't let a full 30 days pass before we meet again.
So are we saying that we're open for that weekend? Is that what I'm hearing?
The 16th,
The 16th?
but the caveat is nighttime, evening time appropriate with it being the weekend.
Much earlier.
All right. What about noon on the 16th?
Perfect.
I can't, but again, next month, I could do it virtual.
Okay.
Let's go with the weekend. I'll
Yeah.
be at everything.
All right.
Will the, Y work, location, the Y?
We gotta figure that out.
We all agree.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Is anybody not okay with the 16th of October at noon? All right, our next meeting will be the 16th of October at noon, the location to be determined. And once we figure that out, Rita will send that out to everybody.
But I will go ahead and post that much information on the website, because I have it, I'll post it, when we upload the recording.
Okay. All right. Motion adjourned.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey, Gina, Who seconded that? J. Michael. Lou, you didn't hear it. Did you second that? Did you second that?
Thank everybody for coming on today, and y'all stick with this, okay? All right, unity in the community.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for sticking around. Appreciate it.
And now that well, I'm gonna talk to the bar. On the board.